Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different.
Yeah, we are.
Usually we take a broad concept or a historical event and, we pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Today we are opening up a specific legal text. And I want to be clear right off the top. Do not turn this on.
I know. It sounds dry.
It sounds like the cure for insomnia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Texas Penal Code, Chapter 33. But trust me, we are wading into some very murky waters, or maybe I should say the digital stream that runs through every single aspect of your life. We are talking about computer crimes.
Which is a deceptively simple title for a chapter of law that essentially, it governs the matrix we all live in now.
Exactly. And I know what you're thinking, I'm not a hacker. I don't wear a hoodie in a dark room. Why do I care about the penal code? But stick with us.
Please do.
Because this isn't just about lawyers and courtrooms. This is about the device you are holding in your hand right now. It's about your laptop, your Wi-Fi, that weird email you got yesterday, and, frankly, some habits you might have that you didn't even realize were legally questionable.
That's the reality, isn't it? This chapter draws the lines in the sand for the digital age. It defines what a computer is, legally speaking, what counts as hacking, and exactly how much trouble you can get into if you cross those lines in the state of Texas.
And, spoiler alert,
the trouble is significant.
Our promise to you today is that we are going to dummy it down. Legal texts are notoriously dense, they're intimidating, and frankly, they feel written in a language that's designed to confuse normal human beings.
It's almost a different language.
It is. So our mission is to take that complex legalese, strip away the jargon, and translate it into plain English that anyone can understand and, more importantly, remember. We want you to be the smartest person in the room the next time someone brings up cybersecurity.
We want you to walk away understanding the rules of the road, because in the digital world, ignorance of the law is definitely not a defense.
Absolutely not. Before we boot up this discussion, and yes, pun intended, I have a mandatory request for you.
Here it comes.
If you are enjoying these deep dives, if you like getting smarter while you commute or do the dishes, please take 1 second right now to hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps the channel grow and lets us keep digging into these massive topics for you.
It really does.
And hey, while you're at it, check out our website. We'll have more resources and links to the statutes we're tearing apart today.
It makes a difference. Plus, you don't want to miss what's coming next.
Okay, housekeeping done.
Yeah.
Let's set the stage. We are looking at Title VII of the Penal Code, Offenses Against Property. And that title alone is interesting to me. Property.
That is the fundamental shift you have to make in your head to understand any of this. In the eyes of the law, computer crimes are offenses against property.
Not against, like, a person or an idea. It's property.
Right. Traditionally, we think of property as land, cars, jewelry, tangible things you can hold. But Texas law has aggressively updated that view to include data, processing power, and digital access as a form of property.
So the car, in this case, is a server, and the land is a network.
Precisely. And the scope here is incredibly broad. We're going to cover everything from what we traditionally think of as hacking, brute force attacks, things like that, all the way to ransomware, online impersonation, or catfishing.
Oh, yeah.
And the specific, very heavy laws that protect what the state calls critical infrastructure.
So the goal is to understand where those legal lines are drawn, because as we are going to see, the line isn't always a firewall. Sometimes it's just a user agreement you didn't read.
It's very, very possible you've walked right up to that line without ever knowing it.
So let's start at the very beginning. Section 33.01, the definitions. This is the playing field.
Yeah.
And the first thing we have to define, obviously, is the machine itself, what legally counts as a computer.
And you'd think this would be simple, right? A laptop, a desktop, maybe a big server in a data center.
Right. But we are living in the Internet of Things now. I'm looking at the definition here in section 33.014, and I'm immediately thinking about all the edge cases. It says, an electronic, magnetic, optical, electrochemical, or other high-speed data processing device.
Okay.
Does that include the embedded system in my smart dishwasher? Or, more importantly for our tech-savvy listeners, what about a virtual machine? If I spin up an instance on Amazon Web Services, is that a computer, or is the physical server rack the computer?
That is where the Texas statute gets incredibly sticky and, quite frankly, very comprehensive. The definition says a device that performs logical, arithmetic, or memory functions. So, your smart toaster.
Yeah.
If it has a chip and it processes data, yep, it is legally a computer. But to your point about the virtual machine, the statute goes on to include all input, output, processing, storage, or communication facilities that are connected or related to the device.
Related to their device, that phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It is doing massive, massive work. It effectively erases the legal distinction between hardware and software containers.
You can't argue your way out of it.
No. If you hack a virtual machine or a Docker container, you can't argue in court, well, Your Honor, I didn't touch the physical server. I only touched the software instance. The law views the logical container, the storage, and the physical iron as part of the same computer system.
Which brings us to the peripheral nightmare. The statute mentions input and output facilities.
Right. This is what I like to call the printer trap.
The printer trap. Okay, explain that.
Okay, so consider a secure corporate network. You are a bad actor, or maybe you're just a curious explorer. You know you can't touch the servers. They're locked down. You can't touch the workstations.
They've got good security.
Right. But you scan the network, and you find a networked printer that still has a default admin password from the factory. You log into the printer.
Okay, so I'm in the printer. I haven't stolen any data. I'm just looking at what? Toner levels or the print queue?
Legally, it does not matter.
All right.
Under 33.01, that printer is an input-output facility that is related to the broader computer system. By accessing the printer without effective consent, you have legally breached the computer.
Just for checking the toner.
You are now in potential felony territory just for checking the toner on a device you don't own.
So you can't argue, I didn't hack the computer, I just hacked the peripheral.
No. That argument is dead on arrival. The computer is the entire ecosystem, the whole thing.
Okay, so the machine is everything from the router to the cloud instance to the printer. Now let's talk about the action. What does it mean to access a computer? Because in my head, access means I typed in a password, the screen unlocked, and I'm in. I'm looking at the desktop.
That is access, certainly. But under Section 33.01, access is defined much, much more aggressively than that.
How aggressive are we talking?
Well, the definition includes the standard stuff like store data in or retrieve data from, but it also includes words like approach, instruct, and communicate with.
Approach. That sounds physical, like I'm walking up to it at a bar or something.
In a digital sense, you sort of are. Think about a port scan.
Okay, for the non-technical listeners, that's when you basically send a little signal to a server to see what doors are open, right?
Exactly. You're sending a signal to a specific port, say port 80 for web traffic or port 22 for a secure login, and you're just waiting to see if the server acknowledges you.
I haven't logged in. I haven't stolen a file.
You've just knocked on the door to see if anyone is home.
And under Texas law, that knock.
That knock can be construed as approaching or communicating with the computer.
So if we're using an analogy, if a computer is a house,
Right.
access usually means walking through the front door.
Yeah.
But under this definition, access is just walking up the driveway.
It's walking up the driveway, it's knocking on the door, it's jiggling the handle to see if it's locked, it's shouting through the mail slot. All of that falls under the legal definition of access.
That is terrifyingly broad. It really
Right.
sounds like it criminalizes curiosity.
It's designed to capture the reconnaissance phase of a cyber attack. Law enforcement doesn't want to wait until you steal the database to arrest you. They want to arrest you when you're shaking the doorknobs.
That makes sense.
The definition also explicitly includes intercept data from. So if you're packet sniffing, just listening to the traffic on a Wi-Fi network without logging into any of the machines.
You're eavesdropping on the house.
Exactly, and that is access. And if you don't have consent, it's a crime.
Which brings us to the linchpin of this entire chapter, effective consent.
Yes. Almost every single crime we are going to discuss today hinges on this one phrase, without the effective consent of the owner.
And it's not enough to just say, I had consent. It has to be effective. So let's break down what makes consent ineffective. The statute lists a few specific ways.
It does. It's in Section 33.01(12). First, and maybe most obviously, consent is not effective if it is induced by deception or coercion.
Okay, this is social engineering 101.
Yeah.
If I call you up pretending to be IT support and say, hey, we're migrating the server, can you give me your password? And you give it to me.
I gave you consent. I verbally told you the password, but I did it because you lied to me about who you are. You used deception. Therefore, legally, my consent is void. It's ineffective. You have still committed a crime by using that password.
Got it. Now, the next one is where I see a lot of gray area, especially in the corporate world. Consent is ineffective if it was given by someone who is not authorized to give it.
Right. This gets tricky.
Let's play this out. I'm a vendor. I show up to fix a server, the IT director isn't there, but the janitor lets me into the server room. Or maybe a junior intern gives me the root password because I asked nicely and looked official.
That is a very dangerous spot to be in. The janitor or the intern gave you consent to enter or access, but do they have the authority to grant that access? Almost certainly not.
But how am I supposed to know that? Do I need to check the company's org chart before I type in a password someone gives me?
In a criminal defense scenario, you might argue you had a reasonable belief they were authorized. But, strictly speaking, the law says if the person granting access didn't have the right to grant it, your access is unauthorized. It kind of puts the burden on the person accessing the system to verify the credentials of the person opening the door for them.
That brings us to the purpose clause, which I think is the one that catches the most normal people.
I agree. Consent is ineffective if it's used for a purpose other than that for which the consent was given.
This is the ex-girlfriend clause.
It effectively is, yeah. Let's say you work at a bank. You have a login. You have permission consent to access customer accounts to help them with deposits or transfers. That is your purpose.
That's my job. I'm authorized to be in the system.
Exactly. But if you use that same login to look up your ex-girlfriend's bank balance just to see if she's doing okay.
I had the password. I had the login. I was sitting at my work desk doing work.
But you used it for a purpose other than what it was given for. The moment you searched for her name out of personal curiosity, your effective consent evaporated. Poof, gone. You are now accessing the computer illegally. You are digitally trespassing.
That is a massive distinction.
Yeah.
It transforms what should be a workplace policy violation, something that just gets you fired into a criminal offense.
Correct. And prosecutors can and do use this. It's not just about breaking in from the outside. It's about staying within the lines you were given on the inside.
There's one more specific exclusion regarding consent that seems like a trap for security researchers. Given solely to detect the commission of an offense.
Ah, the honeypot clause.
Explain that.
In cybersecurity, a honeypot is basically a fake server or system designed to look vulnerable. It's bait. Companies set them up to catch hackers or to study their methods.
So they're inviting trouble in a way.
They are. And if a hacker sees this open, juicy-looking server and jumps in, they can't go to court and say, well, you left the door open to catch me, so clearly you wanted me to come in.
You invited me.
The law says no. Just because we set a trap doesn't mean you have consent to walk into it.
Before we move to the specific crimes, there's one more definition we need to flag because it carries much heavier penalties down the line. Critical infrastructure.
Yes. Section 33.0110A. This is a laundry list of facilities where if you mess with their computers, the law comes down on you like a ton of bricks.
Some of these are obvious. Chemical plants, refineries, power generating facilities. I think we all understand why we don't want people hacking the nuclear plant.
Right. Electrical substations, water treatment plants, stuff that if it goes down, people could get hurt or society grinds to a halt.
But there were some surprising inclusions on this list for me. Railroad switching yards and trucking terminals.
Think about it. Texas is a massive logistics hub. The entire national supply chain runs through it. If you hack the computer system of a major trucking terminal and you scramble the logistics data just to change the manifests, delete the routes.
You're not just annoying a company.
No, you could stop food from getting to grocery stores. You could stop medical supplies from getting to hospitals. You could stop parts from getting to factories.
That's true. It's basically economic warfare.
Exactly. Liquid natural gas storage is on there too. And telecommunications, switching offices, cable TV head-ins. Basically the backbone of how we move energy, goods, and information. If you touch these systems, do not expect a slap on the wrist. The state views this as an attack on the stability of Texas itself.
Okay, so we have our machine, we know what access looks like, and we know we need permission. Now, let's get into the actual crimes. Section 2, the core offense, breach of computer security.
This is section 33.02. This is the bread and butter of this entire chapter.
So what is the basic entry-level crime here?
The base-level offense is simply this: knowingly accessing a computer network or system without the effective consent of the owner.
That's it. I don't have to steal anything.
Nope, that's big scam.
I don't have to break anything or change anything.
Yeah.
So simply logging in where I'm not supposed to be.
Is a crime. Specifically, it starts as a Class B misdemeanor. But, as we just mentioned, if the computer you access belongs to the government, or it's part of that critical infrastructure,
It jumps up.
it bumps up to a state jail felony immediately.
It's for looking.
Just for being there. It's digital trespassing. But then, it gets worse.
Of course it does. This is the intent escalator.
Right. Subsection B1 says that if you access the computer with the intent to defraud someone or to harm them or to alter, damage, or delete property, now we're in a completely different ballgame.
So it's not just about trespassing anymore. It's about what you plan to do once you were inside.
Exactly. If I break in to steal the data or to erase the database, the intent changes the nature of the charge before I even do it.
Now, I want to pause here because we have to talk about punishment.
Mm.
In normal theft-like shoplifting, it's usually about the value of the thing you stole. Steal a candy bar, it's a misdemeanor. Steal a car, it's a felony. How do they value a computer crime?
They use something called the aggregate amount. And this is probably the most dangerous trap in the entire statute for anyone in the InfoSec community or even just a curious teenager.
Why is it around?
Because it's not just the value of what you stole. Section 33.012 defines aggregate amount as the sum of the direct loss, plus S, any expenditure required by the victim to determine whether data was altered or damaged, and the cost to restore or recover the system.
I want to make sure everyone listening really understands the gravity of that. It's the panic premium.
That is a perfect way to put it. Let's run a scenario. Let's call him Script Kiddie Kevin.
Wait,
Kevin finds a vulnerability in a Fortune 500 company's web portal. He doesn't steal customer data. He doesn't steal credit cards. He just changes the background image of their homepage to a picture of a funny cat.
A classic defacement. A harmless prank, in theory. The value of the damage is $0.
Yeah.
Maybe $50 to pay an admin to change the JPG back.
Direct damage, sure, $50. But the Fortune 500 company doesn't know that Kevin only changed the picture. They just see an unauthorized intrusion. They panic. And they are required by compliance laws like GDPR or CCPA to ensure that no personal identifiable information was touched.
So they can't just change the picture back and call it a day. They have to launch a full investigation.
A full forensic investigation. And they don't do that in-house. They hire a Big Four cybersecurity firm. That team flies in. They charge $700 an hour per analyst. They spend 3 weeks scrubbing every server to prove a negative, to prove that nothing else was touched. The final bill comes out to, let's say, $250,000.
And under Section 33.02?
Under Section 33.02, that $250,000 expenditure required to determine whether data was altered is legally attributed to Kevin.
So the prank costs $50, the corporate reaction costs $250,000, and Kevin is sentenced based on a total of $250,050.
Which, if we look at the penalty ladder, lands him squarely in a second-degree felony.
A second-degree felony. What are the tiers? Can you run them down for us?
Sure. Less than $100 is a Class C misdemeanor. Under to $750 is a Class B. $750 to $2,500 is a Class A misdemeanor.
Okay, still misdemeanors.
Then it jumps. $2,500 to $30,000 is a state jail felony. $30,000 to $150,000 is a third-degree felony. $150,000 to $300,000 is a second-degree felony.
That's where Kevin is.
And over $300,000 is a first-degree felony.
So Kevin, with his cat picture, is facing 2 to 20 years in prison. The same category as manslaughter.
Effectively, yes. The law basically outsources the sentencing guidelines to the victim's IT budget and their level of panic. If Kevin had hacked a small mom-and-pop shop, he might get a misdemeanor because they can't afford a huge forensic audit. He hacks a bank, he gets serious prison time for the exact same keystrokes.
That is wildly disproportionate, but I guess the lesson here is don't touch what isn't yours because you can't control the reaction.
Exactly. The cost of the cleanup is legally on you.
There's another multiplier here that caught my eye. Identifying information.
Yes, Section 33.02b-2. The law is very, very protective when it comes to identity theft. The statute says if you access a computer to obtain identifying information of another person, we're talking names, socials, dates of birth.
If I access one computer to get that info.
It's a second-degree felony, automatically, no dollar amount needed.
But the statute has a specific escalation if you access more than one computer.
It does. And think about how a real network intrusion works. It's rare you just hit one machine.
Right. You'd compromise one, then use it to jump to another. Lateral movement.
Exactly. You might pop the receptionist's PC, then jump to the manager's PC, then from there you pivot to the server. If you access more than one computer with the intent to obtain that ID info, it becomes a first-degree felony.
So a standard hack that involves pivoting between just two machines could trigger the highest penalty available in Texas law, short of capital murder.
It creates a massive deterrent against large-scale identity theft rings. But again, the wording is so broad that even a small-scale intrusion that touches two different machines could land you with a life-altering charge.
Okay, I have to ask this on behalf of all the good guys out there. What if I'm a security researcher? What if I'm a penetration tester who is literally hired to find these bugs? Am I committing a felony every time I do my job?
That is a critical question. And thankfully, the law does account for this. Section 33.02 provides a specific defense.
Phew. Okay, what does it say?
It is a defense to prosecution if your conduct consisted solely of action taken pursuant to a contract entered into with the owner for the purpose of assessing security.
Pursuant to a contract.
That is the magic phrase. You need a signed scope of work, a contract, something in writing.
So if I'm a white hat hacker and I just decide to help a company by hacking them to show them their flaws, but they never ask me to.
You are not protected. You are a criminal. We call that gray hat hacking in the industry, but legally it's just black. You absolutely need that contract before you touch a single key.
So the defense, I was just checking your locks for you, is not a valid excuse unless they hired you to check the locks.
Precisely. Get it in writing or don't do it. Period.
All right, moving on to Section 3, Modern Warfare. We are talking about things that feel very, very current. Ransomware, tampering, and decryption.
This covers sections 33.023 and 33.024. Let's start with tampering. Section 33.023b talks about electronic data tampering.
This sounded a lot like man-in-the-middle attacks to me when I read it.
It is. That's exactly what it's targeting. The text describes it as intentionally altering data as it transmits between two computers through deception.
So if I intercept an email from you to your bank that says transfer $100, and I change the destination account number to my own.
That is electronic data tampering. You altered the data while it was in transit.
And then we have ransomware. I feel like we hear about this every single week in the news.
We do. And Texas now has a specific legal definition for it. Section 33.023 defines it as a computer contaminant or lock that restricts access to data.
And the key element is the demand, right?
Right. It's not ransomware unless it restricts access under circumstances where the person demands money, property, or a service to remove that lock.
It's digital kidnapping. Pay us a bunch of Bitcoin or you will never see your files again.
Exactly. But I want to point out subsection G here because this feels like a rare moment of legislative clarity regarding the modern economy.
This is the Netflix exemption.
Yes. The law specifically lists an exemption for software that restricts access because, quote, authentication is required to upgrade or access purchased content, or access to subscription content has been blocked for non-payment.
If you think about it, the basic definition of ransomware restricting access and demanding payment is the exact business model of every software as a service company. Salesforce, Adobe, Spotify.
Exactly. Without subsection G, the CEO of Adobe could theoretically be arrested for felony ransomware every time a user's Creative Cloud subscription lapses and locks them out of Photoshop.
The Photoshop felony.
Right, so the legislature had to carve that out. But there is a very important nuance here that developers and freelancers need to watch. We see this in the freelance world all the time.
What's the trap?
The logic bomb. Let's say you're a freelance web developer. You build a beautiful website for a client, you hand over the keys, but the client is slow to pay. They ghost you on that final invoice.
So you get angry.
You get angry. And because you were smart, you left a little backdoor in the code. You activate a script that shuts down their site or locks the database until they wire you the cash.
I feel like I see posts about this on Reddit all the time. Client didn't pay me, so I bricked their site, and everyone in the comments cheers them on.
On Reddit, they cheer. In a Texas courtroom, that is a confession to a felony.
Why? They owe me the money.
Because you aren't a subscription service. Once you delivered the code, it became their property, usually, depending on the contract. By remotely locking it to demand payment, you are acting as a ransomware actor. You are not Netflix. You are a hostile actor restricting access to a computer system you no longer have effective consent to control.
So the demand pay me or the site stays down is legally indistinguishable from pay us Bitcoin or I'll delete your files.
In the eyes of this statute, yes. It is a very, very dangerous way to collect a debt.
Okay, what about unlawful decryption, section 33.024? Why is decrypting something a crime? Isn't that just, math?
It is math, but it's math with a malicious purpose. The law forbids intentionally decrypting encrypted private information through deception and without a legitimate business purpose.
How does the law define decryption here?
It's defined as breaking the encryption formula, using a stolen key, or interfering with the encryption service itself, basically cracking the code to get at what's inside.
And this is really about protecting privacy.
It is. If you break into an encrypted file, say someone's private journal or secure financial records, you are violating the statute.
Now, both of these, ransomware and decryption, have special enhancements if you touch something called privileged information. What is that?
Privileged information is specifically defined as protected health information, so HICAPA stuff. Anything covered by attorney-client privilege or accountant-client confidentiality.
So if I use ransomware on a hospital,
You are in a world of trouble. If you knowingly restrict access to privileged information, the penalties automatically skyrocket. But here is the really dark part of that.
what's that?
The law connects the digital act to physical consequences. If a client or a patient suffers harm, bodily injury, or death that is attributable to the offense, the grade of the offense goes way up.
Death. From a computer crime.
Imagine you hit a hospital's computer system with ransomware. The doctors can't access patient records. They don't know who is allergic to penicillin. They administer a drug, and a patient goes into anaphylactic shock and dies.
All because I locked a computer.
All because you locked a computer. Under Section 33.023 D2(4), if a patient suffers serious bodily injury or death as a result, that ransomware attack becomes a first-degree felony.
You are effectively being charged with the consequences of the medical error that you caused.
Yes. The law recognizes that these systems are not just storing data, they're keeping people alive. Messing with them is not a victimless crime.
Let's look at Section 4, direct attacks. We've got interference and impersonation.
Right, so Section 33.022 is electronic access interference. This is your denial of service or DDoS law.
And how does the law describe it?
Intentionally interrupts or suspends access to a computer system without the effective consent of the owner.
So if I flood a website with so much traffic that it crashes and nobody else can use it?
You have suspended access. You've committed the offense.
No, it's a penalty for that.
It's a straight third-degree felony.
Whoa. There's no dollar amount, no aggregate amount needed to hit that level.
No, the statute doesn't mention a dollar threshold for this one at all. The act of shutting down the system is enough to trigger the felony charge.
That recognizes that availability itself is a form of property. If I block the door to your store so no customers can come in, I'm harming your business. This is the digital equivalent of that.
Exactly right.
Okay, and next is one of the most socially relevant ones. Online impersonation, Section 33.07.
This is the catfishing law, but it covers a lot more than just bad dating profiles.
It breaks it down into two main types, right? Web pages and messages.
Correct. Subsection A is about creating a web page or a social media profile. If you use someone else's name or persona to create a page with the intent to harm, defraud, intimidate, or threaten, it's a third-degree felony.
So if I make a fake Facebook profile for my boss and start posting embarrassing things to try and get him fired,
That is intent to harm. That is a felony.
what if I just do it as a joke? Like a parody account?
That's a gray area. The statute requires the intent to harm, defraud, intimidate, or threaten. If it is clearly satire-like, an account named the fake CEO of company X, and there's no real intent to harm or defraud, it likely wouldn't meet the standard. But it's a risky line to walk.
True. And the second type of impersonation.
Subsection B covers electronic communications, emails, texts, instant messages. If you send a message referencing someone's ID info, like their name or phone number, to make the recipient believe the victim was the one who sent it.
Spoofing an email address.
Yes. Sending an email that looks like it's from the CEO saying, hey, I need you to wire money to this new account immediately.
A classic scam.
And that's usually a Class A misdemeanor. But there is a very specific and serious escalation here known as the swatting provision.
Oh, right. Swatting is when you call 911 pretending to be someone else to get a SWAT team to storm their house.
Exactly. Subsection C says if you commit this impersonation offense with the specific intent to solicit a response by emergency personnel, it bumps up to a third-degree felony.
Because you're weaponizing the police against someone.
You are. And police showing up with guns drawn is an incredibly dangerous situation. People have died in swatting incidents. The law wants to punish the person who made that fake call as a felon.
Now, I did notice a defense here for the platforms themselves.
Yes, Section 33.07E, interactive computer services, ISPs, cable providers, they're all exempt. If I use Facebook to impersonate you, Facebook isn't liable. I am. They are just seen as the conduit.
Makes sense. Okay, we are now getting into the really heavy stuff. Section 5, protecting the vulnerable and protecting democracy. We should probably spend some real time here because these are massive topics.
They are two very different topics, minors and voting, but both are given extremely high priority in this chapter of the law.
Let's start with Section 33.021, online solicitation of a minor. This is clearly about catching predators.
It is. And the law is written to be incredibly aggressive and very broad to make sure they can catch them.
First, let's define minor under this law.
An individual younger than 17 years old.
Okay. And the conduct that's prohibited is communicating in a sexually explicit manner, distributing sexually explicit material, or soliciting a minor to meet up.
Right. But here's the thing that people absolutely need to understand. The strict liability aspect regarding the victim's age, or rather, the irrelevance of whether the victim is even real.
What do you mean by that?
Look at subsection A1. It defines a minor as an individual younger than 17, but then look at the offense. The crime applies if you communicate with someone you believe to be a minor.
So if I'm in a chat room and I'm talking to someone who says, "Hi, I'm 14," but it's actually a 40-year-old undercover police officer.
Yeah. There is no actual minor involved in that conversation. No child was ever in danger. But you believe there was. Your intent was to talk to a child.
And that belief is enough.
That is the crime. You cannot use the defense, but it was a cop, not a real kid. The intent to target a child is what the statute criminalizes, not the outcome.
That's crucial. You can't use the "I was tricked" defense if you thought you were the one tricking a child.
Exactly.
Are there any defenses? Because, teenagers date each other. We don't want to criminalize normal high school romance.
Correct. And the law accounts for that. Subsection 2 is what's commonly known as the Romeo and Juliet clause. It is a defense if the actor is not more than 3 years older than the minor, and the minor consented to the communication.
So a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old dating.
That's legal. The law isn't trying to police peer relationships. It's targeting adult predators.
There's also an enhancement regarding schools.
Yes. If you commit the offense during school hours, and you know the minor is at school when it happens, the punishment is increased to the next higher category. It's the school zone concept applied to the internet. If you are distracting a child with this material while they're supposed to be learning, the state takes that very personally.
It's aggressive, but it makes sense. Now let's pivot to the bedrock of democracy, voting. Section 33.05, tampering with direct recording electronic voting machines.
We need to be very, very clear here. This is the nuclear option of the Texas Penal Code. The legislature has essentially drawn a bright red circle around these machines and said, if you touch this, your life as you know it is over.
What exactly is the crime here? What does it forbid?
It's knowingly accessing the voting system to prevent a vote from being cast, change a vote, prevent a vote from being counted, or cause an invalid vote to be counted.
Basically, rigging the machine in any way.
Yes. But look at subsection C. This is the most critical part of this section.
Read it for us.
An offense under this section does not require that the votes as affected by the person's actions actually be the votes used in the official determination of the outcome of the election.
Okay, translate that into plain English.
It means it is a conduct-oriented offense, not a result-oriented offense. In a murder trial, you usually need a body. In a theft trial, you need proof something was stolen. Here, you do not need to succeed in stealing the election.
So let's say I'm a white hat hacker. I'm convinced the machines are insecure. I sneak into a polling place, access a machine, and change one vote count from candidate A to candidate B, and then I immediately change it back, just to prove I could do it.
The election outcome was not changed. No voter was actually disenfranchised. But the moment you access that machine with the intent to prevent or change a vote, even for a split second, you committed the crime.
The attempt, the access itself, the manipulation, that is the whole offense.
Correct. And the penalty.
Laid on me.
Felony of the first degree.
Talk of the chart. That's the same level as aggravated sexual assault or attempted murder.
Correct. The state of Texas places the integrity of the election system on the same level of importance as human life.
Does prevent a vote include things like a DDoS attack on the election system?
That's a fascinating question. If you launch a denial of service attack against the central tabulation server, so it can't receive the vote counts from the precincts, you are effectively preventing the count from happening.
And since it involves a voting system,
you would likely bypass all the usual breach of computer security charters we talked about earlier and go straight to section 33.05. You aren't just a hacker anymore. You are, legally speaking, an enemy of the state.
So we've covered the machine, the breach, the ransomware, the impersonation, the kids, and the votes. That is a lot of ground.
It is.
Section 6, let's try to synthesize this. What is the why here? What is the so what of this entire chapter?
If you zoom out and look at the big picture, the overarching theme is crystal clear. Information is property.
Data is property.
Section 33.0116 explicitly defines property to include data. The law has moved past the old idea that you have to physically take something for it to be stealing. If you copy my secret formula, I still have the formula, but I've lost the exclusivity. I've lost value. The law recognizes that intangible value.
And the other theme I noticed running through everything is deception. It came up over and over again.
It did. Effective consent fails if there's deception. Data tampering requires deception. Unlawful decryption requires deception. The law is trying to distinguish between brute force technical attacks and social engineering. It recognizes that the weakest link in almost any security system is the human being, and it explicitly criminalizes the act of tricking that human.
It's not just about technical skill, it's about the manipulation involved.
Precisely.
One last detail. We saw a section about the Attorney General, section 33.04. What's that about?
It's a quick one. It just notes that the state attorney general's office can assist local prosecutors with these cases.
Well, why is that needed?
Because these cases are incredibly technical. A local district attorney in a rural county might not understand IP spoofing or encryption keys or how a DDoS attack works. The AG has the statewide resources and the expertise to help prosecute these complex tech crimes effectively.
Makes sense. You need experts to catch experts.
Indeed you do.
Okay, we are nearing the end of our dive. But before we surface, I want to leave our listeners with a final provocative thought, something for you to mull over.
Go for it.
Let's go all the way back to that definition of access we started with. To approach or otherwise make use of any resource.
Yeah.
Imagine you are walking down the street. Your phone is set to automatically connect to open Wi-Fi networks. You walk past a house with an old, unsecured Linksys router. Your phone connects automatically. It sends a hello packet. It gets an IP address from the router.
Happens all the time.
Did you just approach and make use of a resource of a computer network without the effective consent of the owner?
Technically.
Wow.
Technically, you made use of their router to get an IP address. You certainly didn't have explicit consent.
But did I have the criminal intent? Probably not. A prosecutor would have a hard time with that. But what if I stayed connected and decided to check my email? Now I'm knowingly using their resource.
That is a very, very gray area. Most prosecutors would never touch a case like that. But if you're strictly reading the letter of the Texas law, you might be walking a very thin line without even realizing it.
It just really shows how the law is so much stricter and broader than we think. We assume hacking is a guy in a hoodie typing furiously, but hacking, by this definition, might just be using a resource that isn't yours, even accidentally.
It's a sobering thought. Digital boundaries are invisible, but legally, they are very real walls.
Well, on that slightly paranoid note, we are going to wrap it up. We've gone from defining the machine to protecting the ballot box.
From Class C misdemeanors all the way to first-degree felonies.
We hope this deep dive helps you understand the digital legal landscape a little better. Remember, keep your passwords safe, don't click on weird links from strangers, and for heaven's sake, don't impersonate your boss on Facebook.
That's very good advice.
And please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. It helps us keep the lights on and the servers running, legally, of course.
Legally!
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Stay safe out there.